The FIA investigation headline sounds massive. Mercedes, Silverstone qualifying, a mysterious front wing, new evidence, an illegal trick, and the kind of paddock suspicion that can turn one lap into a full-blown Formula One crisis. But here is the part that makes this story even more dangerous. The source does not confirm that Mercedes were found guilty. It does not show an FIA penalty. It does not prove an illegal device. What it does show is that Mercedes' front wing behavior became serious enough to be questioned, discussed, and connected to reports about legality, Ferrari concerns, and a possible loophole. And that is where the real tension begins. Because if Mercedes broke the rules, the FIA can stop them. But if Mercedes found a legal loophole, hidden in plain sight, then every rival team has a much bigger problem. They cannot protest it away. They have to understand it. They have to copy it, beat it, or watch Mercedes turn one controversial qualifying moment into a new weapon. A front wing at Silverstone is not just a piece of carbon fiber. It controls the first contact between the car and the air. It affects balance, grip, tire confidence, and how hard the driver can attack the fastest corners on the track. So when Mercedes suddenly looks sharp after qualifying, the paddock does not ask one question. It asks the question that scares everyone. Is this illegal? Or is this genius? Subscribe to the channel. Silverstone is the kind of circuit that turns a technical rumor into a paddock obsession. Because at some tracks, a Formula One car can hide behind one strength. A powerful engine can cover weak cornering. A perfect tire window can make a difficult car look calm. A slow layout can protect a nervous rear end. And one clean qualifying lap can create the illusion that everything is under control. But Silverstone does not give cars that luxury. Silverstone asks for commitment. Fast corners. Heavy tire load. Changing wind. Long sections where the driver has to trust the car before the stopwatch gives him any reward. And that is why the Mercedes front wing question became so dangerous after qualifying. Because if a car looks sharper at Silverstone, people do not ignore it. They study it. They ask whether the front of the car was biting harder than expected. They ask whether the balance looked calmer than it should have been. They ask whether the driver could commit earlier because the car was giving him more confidence through the fastest parts of the lap. And in Formula One, confidence is not just emotion. Confidence is performance. A driver who trusts the front end turns in sooner. A driver who trusts the rear carries more speed. A driver who trusts the tires can attack without bleeding time through tiny corrections. That is why a front wing matters so much. It is the first part of the car that meets the air. Before the air reaches the floor, before it reaches the side pods, before it moves around the rear of the car, it hits the front wing. And if that front wing changes how the air flows, even slightly, the entire car can feel different. Think of it like the first domino in a long line. Move the first one differently, and everything behind it changes. That is the hidden power of a front wing. To casual fans, it looks like a thin piece of carbon fiber at the nose of the car. To engineers, it is the beginning of the car's whole aerodynamic story. It can affect grip. It can affect balance. It can affect tire wear. It can affect how brave the driver feels when the corner arrives at terrifying speed. So when reports start talking about mysterious Mercedes front wing behavior, Ferrari questioning legality, and a possible loophole, that is not just background noise. The attached source points directly to those themes, while not confirming a final FIA verdict, penalty, or proven illegal Mercedes device. That distinction matters. Because the story is not, Mercedes were caught. The story is, Mercedes became the question. And becoming the question in Formula One is dangerous. Once a team becomes the question, every detail gets magnified. Every replay matters. Every onboard clip gets studied. Every rival engineer starts looking for patterns that explain why the car behaved the way it did. Was the wing flexing under load? Was the car gaining stability in the fastest corners? Was the front end working in a way that gave the driver more trust? Was Mercedes simply inside the rules, but closer to the edge than rivals expected? That is where the real conflict begins. Formula One is not only a contest of speed. It is a contest of interpretation. The rules say what teams can and cannot do. But the fastest teams live in the spaces where the wording leaves room for creativity. Engineers search every line, every measurement, every test, every definition. They are not just building cars. They are building arguments that can survive inspection. And if an idea is slow, nobody cares. But if an idea is fast, everyone asks whether it should be allowed. That is why a possible Mercedes front wing loophole would hit the paddock so hard. A loophole is not the same as cheating. A loophole means a team may have found a path through the rules that others missed. It means the advantage may be legal, but uncomfortable. It means rivals cannot simply call it illegal and move on. They have to prove it, copy it, or beat it. And that is a nightmare. Because if Mercedes have found something outside the rules, the FIA can act. But if Mercedes have found something inside the rules, then the rest of the grid has a much harder problem. They have to chase. They have to understand how it works. They have to ask whether their own front-wing philosophy is already outdated. They have to decide whether to pressure the FIA for clarification, or spend precious development time trying to build their own answer. That is how one front wing can become bigger than one lap. It starts with suspicion. Then it becomes analysis. Then it becomes political pressure. And suddenly, every team is not just racing Mercedes on track. They are racing Mercedes in the rulebook. This is what makes the Silverstone setting so important. At Silverstone, the front of the car has to be trusted through fast direction changes. If the driver turns in and the car does not respond, the lap is damaged immediately. If the front bites but the rear cannot follow, the car becomes nervous. If the tires get punished too early, the final sector suffers. Everything is connected. So if Mercedes looked stable after qualifying, rivals would naturally wonder whether the front wing was helping the entire car work in a more complete way. Not just more downforce. More usable downforce. That phrase matters. Downforce is the invisible push that presses the car into the track. But downforce is only valuable if the driver can use it. If it arrives unpredictably, it can make the car difficult. If it disappears at the wrong moment, it can break confidence. If it works smoothly, it gives the driver permission to attack. And permission is everything at Silverstone. A driver does not attack a high-speed corner because a spreadsheet tells him to. He attacks because the car feels like it will stay with him. That feeling can be the difference between pole and second place. Between a clean lap and a lap filled with tiny compromises. Between a car that looks alive and a car that looks on edge. That is why Mercedes' front wing becoming the focus is so explosive. Because if the front wing helped the car feel more consistent, it would not just create a faster qualifying lap. It could create a better platform for development. A clearer balance. A stronger connection between driver feedback and engineering decisions. And Mercedes, with a clear platform, are one of the last things rivals want to see. For years, the thread around Mercedes has always been bigger than one result. When Mercedes understand a car, they do not just improve. They compound. A small gain becomes a bigger gain. A useful direction becomes an upgrade path. A driver's confidence becomes clearer feedback. The factory becomes more precise. The team stops reacting and starts building. That is the real fear behind the front-wing debate. Not that Mercedes had one clever part. But that one clever part may be the first clue of a system. A trick can sometimes be spotted quickly. A system is harder. A system means the front wing, the floor, the suspension, the tires, and the driver's feeling all begin to work together. It means the performance is not isolated. It means the car's behavior starts making sense. And when a Mercedes starts making sense, rivals get nervous. Because they know what Mercedes can do with understanding. This is why the idea of an FIA investigation, even before any confirmed verdict from the attached source, carries so much weight in the story. It represents the line between legal genius and illegal advantage. It represents the moment when curiosity becomes scrutiny. It represents the question every rival wants answered before the next race. Is the Mercedes front wing simply clever? Or is it too clever? That question does not need a final answer yet to create pressure. The pressure already begins when teams start preparing for both possibilities. If it is illegal, rivals want it removed. If it is legal, rivals want to know how quickly they can respond. And either way, Mercedes have forced the paddock to spend energy on them. That is a victory before the race even starts. Because Formula One is not only about speed. It is about attention. Every hour a rival spends trying to decode Mercedes is an hour they are not spending with complete freedom on their own car. Every meeting about the Mercedes front wing becomes a small shift in focus. Every discussion about a loophole adds weight to the idea that Mercedes may have found something significant. And this is how a qualifying controversy grows. Not all at once. First, a car looks different. Then, rivals ask questions. Then, reports highlight unusual behavior. Then, legality becomes part of the conversation. Then, the FIA becomes the name everyone is waiting on. And by that point, the story has already changed. Mercedes are no longer just fast. They are suspiciously interesting. And in Formula One, suspiciously interesting is sometimes more powerful than being openly dominant. Because dominance tells rivals they are behind. Mystery makes them wonder how far behind they really are. That is the tension sitting underneath this entire Silverstone story. A front wing that may be legal. A performance that may be repeatable. A rival concern that may grow. An FIA question that may define what happens next. and a Mercedes team that may have found a way to make the first part of the car, the part that touches the air before anything else, change the entire feeling of the machine. That is why this is not just about one qualifying session. It is about the fear of what Mercedes might now understand. And if that understanding survives scrutiny, the rest of Formula One will have a problem much bigger than a protest. But then comes the moment where a technical question becomes a political weapon. Because in Formula One, a rival team does not need to fully prove a design is illegal before the pressure begins. They only need to make the question impossible to ignore. That is why the Mercedes front wing story matters so much after Silverstone qualifying. The source points to reports about mysterious Mercedes front wing behavior, Ferrari questioning Mercedes front wing legality, and wider discussion around whether Mercedes may be exploiting a front wing loophole in the new active aero rules. It does not confirm a final FIA penalty, and it does not confirm that Mercedes were found guilty, but it does show the exact kind of ingredients that can turn paddock curiosity into scrutiny. And scrutiny changes everything. Because the second the FIA is pulled into the conversation, the story is no longer only about lap time. It becomes about trust. Trust in the rules. Trust in the tests. Trust that every team is racing under the same limits. And trust is fragile in Formula One, because every team knows the same truth. The fastest ideas usually live close to the edge. Not far over it. Close to it. That is where engineers search. That is where champions are built. That is where innovation becomes uncomfortable for everyone else. A car that is clearly illegal is easy to condemn. But a car that looks legal in the garage and powerful on track creates a much harder problem. That is where rivals start asking whether the tests are strong enough. Whether the wording is clear enough. Whether the regulation captures what the car is really doing at speed, under load, when the air pressure is pushing against every surface. And with a front wing, that question becomes especially sensitive. Because a front wing is not static in the way fans imagine it. On television, it looks solid. Fixed. Frozen. A shaped piece of carbon fiber sitting at the nose of the car. But at Formula One speeds, every part is under force. The air is not gently passing over the car. It is attacking it. Pressing on it. Bending around it. Loading it in ways that can change how the car behaves from one corner to the next. That does not automatically mean anything illegal. It means every team has to design parts that survive enormous loads while still performing exactly as intended. And that is why rival suspicion can grow so quickly. If a wing appears to move in a way that rivals think creates an advantage, even slightly, the question becomes immediate. Is it flexing beyond what is allowed? Is it passing the static tests but behaving differently on track? Is it within the written rule, but against what rivals believe the rule was meant to prevent? That last part is where Formula One gets messy. Because the rulebook is not just a set of instructions. It is a battlefield of language. One team reads a sentence and sees a limit. Another team reads the same sentence and sees an opportunity. And when the opportunity produces speed, everybody suddenly becomes very interested in the exact meaning of every word. That is why this controversy is not just about Mercedes. It is about the entire sport. Because if Mercedes have found a legal interpretation of the front wing rules, then the rest of the grid may have to rethink its own designs. But if the FIA decides the behavior goes too far, then Mercedes could be forced to change direction, and every rival would learn where the boundary really sits. Either outcome matters. One outcome protects Mercedes. The other slows them down. But both outcomes prove the same thing. Mercedes have made the paddock look. And when a team makes the paddock look, it has already become dangerous. This is where Ferrari's role becomes important in the story. The source references a report about Ferrari protesting Mercedes' front wing legality. Again, the source does not give a confirmed final ruling, but the presence of that theme matters because Ferrari are not just any rival. Ferrari are one of the sport's giants. When a team like Ferrari is connected to legality questions around Mercedes, the emotional temperature rises immediately.